You are cordially invited to a culture of joy and love. And that's good because most of us, if we're honest, are used to living in a culture of anxiety. Take Exodus 32. The people of Israel are anxious because Aaron's brother Moses is spending too much time up the mountain with God. And Aaron is anxious because he's a sort of leader who tries to spot which direction people are heading in and then gets out in front of them. Right now, he spots that what the people want is a visible God. So he makes them a golden calf and throws them a party. He must have known on some level that he was making a terrible, terrible mistake. But that's what happens when you live in anxiety. This sort of anxiety isn't just fear, it's impatience and restlessness, a sort of unreflective desperation. And there's an awful lot of it about, sometimes even in churches. When churches manifest a culture of anxiety and a culture of invitation, we don't convey, come to Jesus, you will have life. We end up saying, come and join us, otherwise we'll die. Okay, I think that's enough about anxiety. Now let's talk about Philippians 4. Here, Paul tells the Philippians something really powerful. He tells them that he's proud of them. My joy and my crown, he calls them. You whom I love and long for. Paul's in prison and quite likely to be executed fairly soon. But he's setting a tone in this letter which isn't gloomy or desperate, but cheerful and appreciative. The Christians in Philippi sit up a little bit straighter with smiles spreading across their strained faces as they realize how valued they are. And along with that, Paul's a peacemaker, mobilizing the community to support two of the church leaders, Euodia and Syntyche, who've fallen out. He promises them not just a professional working relationship, but the peace of God, peace which passes our understanding. Paul is inviting the Philippians to a culture marked by gentleness, gratitude, and rejoicing. He encourages them to fill their hearts and minds with whatever is good and true and noble and praiseworthy. If the atmosphere around Aaron is anxiety, the atmosphere around Paul, despite the prison cell, is joy. And his letter transmits the joy all the way to Philippi, all the way to Finchingfield, all the way to Forest Gate. You've heard about being a non-anxious presence. Well, Paul manages to be a non-anxious influence even in his absence. These verses turn anxiety into joy. And it won't do for you and me just to say, well, I could do with a vicar like Paul, or a bishop like Paul, or a church warden like Paul. We need to do our part and build a culture of joy, a culture of peace, a culture where everyone is appreciated. Yes, including the vicar and the bishop and the church warden, because they're only human and they can't give what they haven't received. I've been helping out a set of parishes in a vacancy. So we did this exercise and I asked the congregation to write down on post-it notes what they most deeply longed for. Somebody wrote this: I want to feel better when I leave church than I did when I arrived. And I think that's fair enough, really. But here's the thing. You're not just a recipient of your church's culture, you contribute to it. If you come to church having filled your mind all week with whatever is true and of good report and honourable, then the joy will spill from you. And you'll do your part on a Sunday in creating the culture of joy that you long for. So, you are cordially invited to a culture of appreciation, peace, and joy. But here's one last thing. You're invited to a culture of love. This is deep. On a good day, I can aspire to be a kind of superficial version of Paul. But Moses's love is way beyond me. There's something deeper here, something so holy that we are standing on holy ground when we even discuss it. Moses is coming down the mountain when he hears the sound of music. And God says, Moses, your people, whom you brought up out of Egypt, have become corrupt. Let me destroy them. And what's more, God makes Moses a proposal. I'll start again with you. Build a new people based on your family after I've destroyed the rest of them. And perhaps Moses is tempted. I mean, Moses is angry too. But Moses' response is extraordinary. He refuses the label of hero. God had called to the Israelites Moses' people, whom Moses brought out of Egypt, but Moses is having none of that. No, these are your people, he says, whom you brought out of Egypt with your great power and a mighty hand. Turn from your fierce anger, relent, and do not bring disaster on your people. If you're going to wipe anyone out, God, kill me. Right here, right now. Blot me out of the book of life. And then we read, the Lord relented and did not bring on his people, you notice they are now. Moses has persuaded God to own them. The Lord did not bring on his people the disaster that he had threatened. So, am I saying that you and I need to ward off God from one another because God wants to kill us? Absolutely not. Firstly, because God isn't like that. And secondly, you and I don't have to stand up like Moses and plead for mercy because somebody's already doing it. Jesus woke up a lot earlier than we did this morning. And before we made it to church or clicked on this YouTube URL, Jesus was already pleading for us before the Father. And the Father was not at all reluctant to listen. No, the Father was pleased to hear Jesus's prayer, and it brought God joy to answer with grace. It's not that God is horrible, that nice Moses or nice Jesus are standing in the way to protect us. No, no. God is rich in mercy, and nothing brings God as much pleasure as seeing Jesus championing us. In other words, if you and I want a Christian community marked by love, it's not going to be a matter of us trying harder and harder to love each other and atone for one another before a scowling God. The secret of loving community is to spend time contemplating the love of the Spirit who unites us, and the love of Jesus who went to hell for us, and the love of the Father whose whole being is glad to shower love upon us. heart deep, world transforming, sacrificial love. When it takes root, it's stunning. I've seen it. Not often, but I have seen it. One example, I was once part of a home group, and one of the group members was Canadian, and he received some terrible news. His mother back in Canada was dying. He couldn't afford the airfare to go and see her one last time. We prayed for him with tears. The next time the group met, there was cash on the table, enough money for him to get a flight. I didn't know where the money had come from, not right then, but later I heard the money had come from Petra, who'd recently become a follower of Jesus and had heard of my friend's need and had sold her car. She'd spend the next 5 years taking public transport. Was Petra repeating the action of Moses or of Jesus? Well, no, of course not. But she had chosen to live in an atmosphere of love, and the love had rubbed off on her, and she loved in turn. Oh, believe me, I know the church is screwed up in so many ways. But hear the word of the Lord. You are nevertheless invited to a feast where the atmosphere is joy, peace, appreciation, and extraordinary sacrificial love. As a messenger, I invite you. Please come.